on 1039 Proud FM with Brent Hawkes. And today we're going to talk about the journey of MCC. Brent, I believe in July 73 you didn't have it, but MCC had their first service at 501 Yonge Street, and only about 10 people showed up, and the Reverend Robert Wolfe conducted that service. So could you tell us a little about that journey? Where were you, and how did you get involved with MCC?
Sure. Yeah, that first service was held in an office over a bar that was loaned to the church. Bob had just arrived in the city. Folks had wanted there to be an MCC and had sent a letter to the head office in Los Angeles, and he was sent up to start the church. At the time, I was in the Maritimes. I was teaching high school and didn't even know that MCC existed. It started in '68 in Los Angeles, but I didn't even know that it was around. And a friend of mine took me to an adult bookstore in Halifax, and I bought one copy of every gay magazine and book there was. And one of them was a copy of The Advocate and the national gay magazines in the United States. And I was sitting in my little 1972 Ford Pinto, flipping through the pages, honestly looking at the pictures. And as I flipped through, there was an ad with a cross on it, and I was stunned. And it was an ad for Metropolitan Community Churches. And I knew that's where I belonged. I knew that's where home was. And up until then, I'd been raised a strict fundamentalist Baptist, but when I went to university, I gave up going to church for a lot of reasons, and I had no church home. And for me, church has always been both comfort and challenge. Comfort when there's been difficult times, but also a great place for challenge, to challenge you to think bigger, to think different, to be more generous, to be more forgiving, etc. And knowing that I was gay at the time, I gave up going to church. And so when I found out about MCC, I knew it was home. And began slowly the process of connecting with the head office in Los Angeles, then eventually moving to Toronto.
Well, that's not uncommon for a lot of gay people to sort of give up churches because I think my generation anyway, if you were gay or in those days homosexual, you were a sinner. And God didn't want you in the church.
Absolutely. Many, many gay people, and justifiably so, are very anti-church or anti-religion. And a lot of gay people would say that they're spiritual but not religious. And I understand that. But, most professions, whether it's the legal profession, the medical profession, the education profession, most professions have gone through a period of being very homophobic. And what we need to do is we need to rescue those professions, not abandon them. And the same thing is true with religion. I mean, I think many gay people are very spiritual. And knowing that we're different, I know for myself when I was growing up, feeling that I knew I was gay, but I knew my church didn't accept it, but I had a very close relationship with God.
I'm going to throw a couple of questions at you. See how good you are, okay? If there is a heaven, is there life after death?
It's interesting. We, a few weeks ago, decided to do a sermon series on questions you always wanted to ask God. And so we put it to our congregation, what are some of the tough questions you've been thinking about but wanting to ask? And some of our folks put it out on Twitter and Facebook, etc. And we got a lot of questions from church folks and non-church folks. And these are the kinds of questions that people wrestle with a lot, but they don't feel like in most churches that they can ask them or they can disagree with each other. And we say at MCC that we're one of the thinking person's churches, and where people can raise these tough questions. And so, whether there's a heaven or not, frankly, we don't know, and yet we give it our best guess. And I think there'd be a lot more respect in the world if people approached religion that way, to realize that the questions they wrestle with, the answers they come up with are their best guess, based on their sacred writings, based on theologians down through the years, based on their own intuition. So back to your question, is there life after death? I believe there is, and I think that there's been a number of examples of near-death experiences where people have experienced being very close to dying and going through a tunnel and meeting people on the other side, etc. So my best guess would be in line with Christianity's best guess, that there is life after death. I doubt if there's the kind of heaven with golden streets and pearly gates, etc. I don't imagine that's the case.
Oh, drat. I thought I was going to be up there in the
of great interest to many gay men. But I'm not sure that that's going to be the situation. But I do believe that we'll be reunited with people we've met before. I do believe that this gift of life is a wonderful, wonderful gift we're given every day, an amazing gift that we're given, and that it doesn't end with death, that death is a transition. The 23rd Psalm says, yea, though we walk through the valley of the shadow of death. So death is the transition to the next stage on our spiritual journey. And exactly what that stage is, we're not sure. But I do believe a key part of that is being reunited with people we've
With
been
love.
important.
Okay, another question now. If God is such a loving being, why is there so much suffering on earth? Why do little kids die? Why are all these soldiers being killed? Why?
Yeah, I think there's a variety of answers to that question. Why suffering exists. The predominant reason suffering exists is because of human beings. God gives us freedom of choice. We create wars. There's enough food on the planet to feed everybody. There's no need for there to be starvation. There's enough medicine in the world to be able to care for. I mean, HIV/AIDS is a perfect example. In North America, the transmission of the virus from mother to child to baby has been virtually eliminated because of the medications we have. Yet in Africa, we're not making those medications available, and so babies are being infected. So many of the cases of suffering in the world are our fault, not God's. And it's very easy to blame God for it. But certainly there are natural disasters that happen. And my best guess at this, Pierce, is that God has created this amazing earth, trusted to our care, given it to us to run, and that in the process of that, bad things are going to happen.
Brent, I was brought up that sex was bad. Tell me.
Yeah, I think that sex can be both good and bad. It depends on how we use it. I think sex can be a wonderful gift from God as a great way for play, for drama, for fun, for certain people, for procreation. Has a variety of uses. It's very unfortunate that churches in general have not just been homophobic, but they've been sex-phobic. And John Boswell wrote an amazing book called Christianity, Homosexuality, and Social Tolerance. And he says around the year 1000 that society became very dualistic in its thinking in general. And as part of that, sex became bad and sex became only for procreation. And that not only had a negative impact in terms of gay and lesbian people, because our sex is seen as non-procreative, but it also had a very negative impact on sex in general. However, sex can also be used inappropriately as a power tool. It can be used to exploit. It can be used in very violent ways. And so I think sex itself can be a wonderful, good thing, and I think we need to get rid of a lot of the guilt. Give you an example. After a sermon on sex at the church, and I don't preach on sex a lot, and I probably should talk about it more, but after one sermon, a young woman came up to me and she said, "Reverend, I've been coming to this church for a year to hear that sermon. I'm heterosexual, I'm married, but whenever my husband and I have sex, we feel guilty." And so there's a lot of guilt around sex for lots of folks.
Yeah, well, certainly was in my life ages ago. Now, Brent, I want to talk a little about your personal life. You've been with your partner, John, for over 20 years. You got married and everything like that. How does it affect his life when you're always in the spotlight?
Well, we've been married 28 years, and I think that it's been a challenge because my hours are long sometimes, evenings, weekends, etc. And so John is by himself a lot. And we're also in a kind of fishbowl because of the church being well known and my face being in the media a bit. Then whenever we're out, then frequently people will come up and want to chat about the church or ask questions about their personal, for their own personal life issues. And so it can be a challenge, but I think John understands that that part of it is necessary in terms of the church being publicly known. But I also think it's lonely for him at times too, with me being away a lot.
Okay, next question, because time is running out. It always is in this darn show. You received the Order of Canada in 2007. There were a number of people that opposed it.
Yeah, it was funny because at the time there really wasn't, because it was unbelievably quiet. And I thought, what's going on? I would have expected the religious right to be going crazy. But they were working behind the scenes, and a group based in the U.S. tried to lobby the government to overturn me getting the Order of Canada. But it was relatively quiet. Nothing compared to the huge amount of outcry from when Henry Morgentaler got the Order of Canada. Yeah, and people have resigned their Order of Canada, 2 more this week. And so, one of the reporters said that it was a minor response when I got the Order of Canada, and that's indicative of how increasingly homosexuality is being accepted and gay people are being thought of as a legitimate part of Canada.
I want to ask you something. The church has gone high-tech. You've got web podcasts or whatever. Could you tell us a little about that?
Yes, we've got a lot of folks in the church who are very savvy on these issues. I'm not one of them, so they're bringing me into this century. But we have started webcasting our services, and if you go to our website, mcctoronto.com, you can either watch them live on Sunday morning at 11.
Well, Brent, thank you for being there for all of us, and God bless you. And as I always say, God save the Queens.